The founding of the Red Arrows meant that the aerobatic display commitment could be taken away from frontline fighter squadrons, and these units, in common with all the other RAF combat squadrons, could concentrate on their war roles. Numerous exercises were by now being held on all RAF operational bases to improve their ability to survive under attack and to develop rapid reaction times.
As part of this heightened operational readiness, by arrangement with the United States Air Force, detachments from RAF combat squadrons regularly flew to Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, where they tested their tactical skills over the very extensive ranges nearby. These ranges were equipped with Soviet-type radars and with other defenses that even included Soviet-built interceptor aircraft, purchased for the purpose from countries in the Middle East. In these exercises, RAF crews gained invaluable experience in operating as closely as possible to actual war conditions.
In 1974, another important new aircraft joined the RAF front line. The Anglo-French Jaguar fighter bombers became operational with No. 54 Squadron. This aircraft went on to equip 8 frontline squadrons and is still in service now.
It combines a Mach 1 capability at low level with an impressive weapon-carrying capacity. 2 30mm Aden guns are fitted, and the aircraft's 5 weapon hardpoints can accept up to 10,000 pounds of ordnance, including Martel anti-radar missiles, 8 1,000-pound bombs, BL-755 cluster weapons or drop tanks. The Jaguar was developed and designed as a training aircraft under an Anglo-French agreement between the British Aircraft Corporation and the French company Breguet Aviation. The program for the Jaguar was headed by an independent project, CEPICAT. By spring 1974, the first frontline Jaguar squadron, No. 54, was operating from RAF Coltishall, a Jaguar conversion unit having been established 6 months previously at RAF Lossiemouth. The roles of the aircraft were interdiction, tactical close support of ground forces, attack against enemy aircraft on the ground, tactical reconnaissance and type conversion training using the 2-seater variant. Hurtling through valleys at breakneck speed, hugging the contours, rolling inverted as it crests hills or ridges, it would be easy to imagine that the Jaguar was equipped with the most sophisticated terrain-following system. In fact, the Jaguar has no radar at all, relying on pilot skill and a sophisticated inertial navigation and attack system to find its targets. Perhaps even more incredibly, the Jaguar is expected to do this in virtually all weathers. Rugged, reliable, and relatively simple, and able to operate from even the most difficult airstrips, the Jaguar is an ideal aircraft for out-of-area operations. The ruggedness of the airframe and undercarriage, combined with low-pressure tires, allow it to take off from fields or makeshift runways. Motorways make an excellent substitute for runways. What makes the Jaguar so suited for these landing conditions is its low approach speed. Once down, the effective nose-wheel steering enables the aircraft to turn in the most confined areas. Since it was introduced into service over 20 years ago, the Jaguar has proved itself to be a highly potent attack aircraft, specializing in low-level, single-pass, high-speed sorties. Still performing a role in the Royal Air Force for which it was not first envisaged, the Jaguar is at the spearhead of any action. Amongst its pilots, the Jaguar has earned a reputation of being a potent weapon and a pilot's aeroplane.
Those Jaguars pose us problems. Those boys truly part the sand and shave the rocks. They have a nice airplane. They fly it aggressively, and their low-level tactics are good, very good. They've got the hang of terrain masking their Jaguars. We find them hard to acquire visually, and when we do pick them up, they're sure no easy kill.
The RAF's helicopter force was also by now being greatly improved. In 1971, the first of 40 Pumas arrived in squadron service, and in 1980, the force was given a considerable boost by the arrival of the first Boeing Vertol Chinooks. Together, these two types gave the RAF a new higher level of capability in transporting troops and supporting them in the field.
In 1969, the arrival of the first Hawker Siddeley Harriers in RAF Germany brought an entirely new dimension to the combat capability of the RAF. Here was an aircraft that didn't depend on vulnerable airfield runways. Instead, the Harrier could operate out of small strips, hidden, for example, in woods in the forward area. This also meant that the aircraft could react within a few minutes to the Army's needs.
The Harrier was a developed version of the P-1127 Kestrel, and it became the first VTOL aircraft in the world to enter operational service. 3 squadrons at RAF Wildenrath took delivery of the original Harrier GR-1s, an aircraft that was soon updated to GR-3 version. Like the original model, the GR-3 was equipped with twin 30mm Aden guns in underbelly pods, together with a variety of weapons and 5 pylons, 2 on each wing and 1 on the fuselage centerline to carry a combination of free-fall and retarded bombs, 68mm SNEB rockets or Sidewinder air-to-air missiles for self-defense. The main differences between the Mark I and the Mark III Harrier was the more powerful engine of the latter, the Pegasus 103, which gave 21,500 pounds of thrust, and the addition of the Ferranti laser ranging and marked target seeker equipment. The Harrier GR3 was followed into service by the GR5, and more recently by the GR7. This very latest model gives the Harrier for the first time a full night attack capability. The Harrier quickly established many records. As early as May 1969, for example, squadron leader Lecky Thompson entered the Daily Mail transatlantic air race by flying from a coal yard near St Pancras Station in the middle of London to a landing ground in New York in 6 hours and 11 minutes, having been refueled over the Atlantic by Victor tankers. For many years now, the Harrier has been a familiar sight at air displays across the world. Its remarkable hovering performance, its pirouettes and slow time just above the ground, and perhaps above all, the astonishing ability of this fixed-wing aircraft to fly backwards, continue to delight crowds of applauding admirers.
The operational qualities of the Harrier were to be tested for real during the Falklands conflict of 1982. Because the Falkland Islands were some 4,000 miles from Ascension, the nearest potential base for air operations, RAF Harriers operated from aircraft carriers of the Royal Navy, alongside their Fleet Air Arm colleagues.
While Sea Harriers, FRS-1s of the 3 Royal Navy squadrons involved, concentrated most of their efforts on air defence work, the 10 Harrier GR3s of No. 1 Squadron undertook mainly ground attack missions. Out of the 1,500 or so Harrier sorties flown during the campaign, about 125 were carried out by RAF aircraft against key Argentine targets on the ground. The extensive use of helicopters by all 3 services was another key feature of the Falklands conflict. Three of the 4 RAF Chinooks sent south with the fleet were lost when the Atlantic conveyor was sunk. But the one remaining machine made a vital contribution in support of the ground forces, removing any last doubts about the value of the helicopter in modern operations. Another aircraft that was deployed to the Falklands was the Hawker Siddeley Nimrod. The first fully equipped production Nimrod, or Nimrod MR1, made its maiden flight on the 28th of June 1968. The maximum speed of 490 miles per hour, it had an effective maximum range of nearly 6,000 miles and an endurance of 12 hours. These statistics meant that the aircraft could travel more than 1,000 miles from its base using a relatively high-speed dash. When it arrived over a target or search area, it would be able to remain on patrol there for more than 6 hours. Another 3 MR1 development aircraft followed the first machine, and in the autumn of 1969, XV-230 became the first of a batch of 40 MR1s to enter service with the RAF. It was the first 4-engine jet aircraft to see maritime reconnaissance service with any of the world's air forces. By the time the Nimrod entered service, the equipment it carried had come a long way from the apparatus used in the Second World War. As more complex and advanced systems became operational, the existing MR1s would be converted over a period of time to a new standard, known as the Nimrod MR2. After a quarter of a century and many thousands of flights involving all kinds of operations, only one Nimrod has ever been lost completely. They have played a vital part both in the defense of Great Britain and in the protection of her economic interests. In their crucial search and rescue role, they have saved an inestimable number of lives. On present form, they should be around until at least the end of the decade, and perhaps for much longer. Quite apart from the local air support provided by the aircraft carriers of the Royal Navy, and from the start of the crisis in early April 1982, very long-range sorties were flown by the Royal Air Force from Wide Awake Airfield on Ascension Island. Using extensive air-to-air refueling, Victors in the radar reconnaissance role, Nimrod maritime patrol aircraft, and Hercules transports were all active from Ascension, making their numerous contributions to the eventual success of the whole expedition in the South Atlantic. A particularly striking aspect of these missions was Operation Black Buck, a series of bombing raids against targets near Port Stanley, carried out by Vulcan bombers. These round trips of about 8,000 miles set a world record for long-range bombing attacks.
In January 1982, an 11-year-long process of design, development and production brought an entirely new and advanced combat aircraft into the front line of the RAF. This was the Tri-National Tornado, a cooperative venture between British, German and Italian manufacturers. For the RAF, the Tornado first reached operational status with No. 9 Squadron at RAF Huntington.
There were two basic Tornado types. The first was the IDS, Interdict to Strike model. The original mark of this version, the GR1, carried two 27mm cannons, one on each side of the forward fuselage. And the aircraft could accept a wide range of other ordnance stowed externally on its 7-weapon hardpoints. In fact, because of the specific role of the RAF Tornadoes in the central region of NATO, most of these aircraft were armed with the JP-233 anti-airfield weapon or with a tactical nuclear device. 229 GR1s, including trainers and the GR1A reconnaissance version, were delivered to the Royal Air Force, equipping squadrons both in RAF Germany and in the UK. All GR1s are optimized for very low-level penetration of hostile defenses, being equipped with a self-contained navigation attack system, automatic terrain-following ground mapping radar, and an inertial navigation system. The other version of the Tornado for the Royal Air Force was the ADV model, the Air Defence variant. This became better known as the F Mark III. It was similar to the IDS model. It carried a multi-mode track-while-scan pulse Doppler radar, and in addition to the standard 223mm cannon, it was armed with 4 Skyflash air-to-air missiles and 2 Sidewinders. With an operational ceiling of about 70,000 feet, the Tornado ADV makes an excellent interceptor, particularly when launched against high-flying intruders approaching from long ranges.
In the late 1990s, the Cold War came to an end, and the whole basis on which the varied capabilities of the RAF had been built began to change. Over the years, many people believed that a new era of peace and international harmony had arrived, but it soon became clear that the threat to the West from the Warsaw Pact had simply been replaced by instability in many other parts of the world. In the Persian Gulf, instability became all-out aggression in August 1991, when Iraq invaded Kuwait. There was a massive international reaction in which the forces of 17 nations took part.
Within 48 hours of the decision by the British government to contribute forces to the area, 12 Tornado F-3s had arrived in the theatre of operations and were combat ready. These first arrivals were soon followed by RAF Jaguars, Nimrods, Victor tankers, VC-10s, Tri-Stars, Hercules, and later on, Buccaneer aircraft. By the 16th of January 1991, the international force was in position and ready to start operations. That night, a massive air assault was launched against key Iraqi targets. The RAF Tornado GR-1s were directed against enemy airfields, where they caused a great deal of damage. It quickly became clear during these operations that the Iraqi Air Force was in complete disarray. And it was also found that the main threat to coalition aircraft came from anti-aircraft guns, not surface-to-air missiles. So the Tornadoes were switched from low-level attack to attacks at medium level. At the same time, fewer JP-233 anti-airfield weapons were employed, and more reliance was placed on conventional 1,000-pound bombs. At first, these were guided onto their target by pave spike laser systems. And then, because of the need to operate at night, by newly arrived TIALD, thermal imaging airborne laser designation pods. As the coalition offensive unfolded, Tornadoes and Jaguars attacked Iraqi transportation targets, bridges, supply depots, ammunition dumps, and other key features in the extensive enemy military infrastructure. After 38 days of unremitting air attack by over 2,500 coalition aircraft, the land offensive was launched. Within only 100 hours of ground fighting, it was clear that the Iraqi forces were defeated, and the coalition called a halt to the advance. Of the 110,000 or so sorties launched by the coalition air forces, over 6,100 were flown by the Royal Air Force. Tornado GR-1s had flown around 1,500 sorties, Tornado GR-1A reconnaissance aircraft about 140, Jaguars around 600, and Buccaneers more than 200. On top of that, massive support had been provided by the Tanker Force, by the Nimrods, and by the transport squadrons of the RAF. By the end of the conflict, the transport force had carried 30,000 tons of freight and 66,000 passengers in over 12,500 sorties. The support helicopters of the RAF had meanwhile flown 2,358 sorties and had carried more than 1,261 tons of stores and 17,773 troops and prisoners of war.
The Gulf War had been one which nobody had foreseen and for which no one had planned. But it clearly showed how successfully air forces could react to the unexpected and how their efforts could be redirected very rapidly to meet new threats. But combat was only one of the challenges for the Royal Air Force as the Cold War ended. Over the 7 decades or so since it was formed, the RAF has often flown humanitarian aid missions, most recently in Nepal and Somalia. Another challenge emerged in 1992, when an urgent need for this kind of aid from the air arose, much nearer home, in the disintegrating remains of what had been Yugoslavia.
Starting in July 1992, and despite the threat of largely random aircraft fire from the ground, RAF Hercules transports flew frequent and often dangerous supply and evacuation missions into the airfield at Sarajevo. Within 18 months, these aircraft had made a total of over 1,100 such sorties and had carried nearly 15,000 tons of aid. Since its maiden flight more than 40 years ago, the Lockheed Hercules has become one of the most successful aircraft of all time. Based on a design that can be tailored to suit an astonishing range of roles, it is equally at home in both the military and commercial environments. With an enormous load carrying capacity and an unrivaled reputation for economy, ruggedness and reliability, the C-130 has become the standard by which all other airlifters are judged. "66 aircraft were ordered during 1966, and the first machine entered operational service in August of the following year. Based on the C-130H, the RAF version was fitted with British-built radio, autopilot and navigation equipment, and was designated as the Hercules C Mark I. The RAF standard crew consisted of a pilot, co-pilot, navigator, flight engineer and loadmaster. In the early 70s, 5 of Britain's 6 Hercules squadrons were based at RAF Lynham in Wiltshire, but nowadays the entire force of 60 aircraft is stationed there. During the first 10 years of service, the RAF's Hercules carried out large-scale troop movements in Anguilla, Malta and Belize. They evacuated British nationals and servicemen from Aden, India and Vietnam, and flew numerous relief missions to famine and disaster areas such as Pakistan, Southern Sudan, Turkey and Nicaragua. In 1980, the engineering company Marshalls of Cambridge began converting 30 C Mark I aircraft to a new C Mark III specification. Based on Lockheed's stretch C-130H-30, the C-3 version is 15 feet longer than the C-1. With the volume of its cargo hold increased by 37%, the C-3 can carry one extra Land Rover or 26 more paratroopers. During 4 decades of continuous operation in almost every part of the globe, it has established itself as the #1 transport and the longest-serving large aeroplane in the world. It has performed almost every conceivable kind of duty, ranging from gunship to aerial spacecraft recovery, and since 1954, it has served with the air forces of more than 60 different countries. Universally popular with all of its operators, this powerful and versatile workhorse has become nothing less than a household name. In support of the same international effort in the Balkans, Royal Air Force Sentry AEW-1 surveillance aircraft operated daily over the former Yugoslavia, while Nimrod maritime patrol aircraft scoured the nearby seas to help enforce the UN arms embargo and its economic sanctions. And Canberra PR-9 photographic reconnaissance aircraft made their vital contribution to intelligence for the UN forces deployed on the ground. Not least in all this RAF air activity in and around the Balkans, from April 1993, 8 Tornado F-3 air interceptors were deployed to the NATO airbase at Goya de Col in Italy to help free the skies over the warring factions from each other's hostile air activity. Then in July, 8 Jaguars joined them in Italy to offer tactical reconnaissance and close air support should these capabilities prove necessary. As well as maintaining this presence in the Balkans region, the Royal Air Force today also provides aircraft to enforce the no-fly zones over northern and southern Iraq. By the end of 1993, Tornadoes on this task, drawn from both squadrons in the UK and from those in Germany, had flown nearly 1,500 operational sorties. In the north of Iraq, Harrier GR7s of the RAF, which replaced the Jaguars originally assigned to the task, had meanwhile flown more than 1,000 reconnaissance missions in supporting the United Nations operations in that area.
These relatively high-profile tasks tend to overshadow the more routine but essential tasks of the RAF. These include the day-to-day maintenance of strategic routes, training overseas, and support of ground and naval forces in several areas of the world. On any one day, the Royal Air Force has around 100 of its aircraft deployed or operating outside the United Kingdom.
The RAF also maintains a round-the-clock, year-round search and rescue service covering the United Kingdom and a large area of the surrounding seas. When a scramble call comes in, whether it's a ship in distress, military or civilian air crews in trouble, a climber lost on a snow-covered mountainside, or a fire on an offshore oil rig, RAF Rescue is there to provide assistance day or night, whatever the conditions. The Royal Air Force Search and Rescue Organisation was established officially in February 1941, and since then it has been involved in the rescue of more than 50,000 people. In the early period of World War II, many priceless aircrew lives were being lost in crashed aircraft on both training and operational flights, because there was little in the way of resources or organisation to provide assistance. However, following the introduction of an organised emergency service, some 13,000 people were rescued during the course of World War II, 8,000 of them airmen. Since the 1950s and 1960s, the total of people assisted has been well over 1,000 annually.
Hello, RTC. I'm ringing the bell. Yes, it's a scramble, Barry. Yes, go ahead, old boy.
The RAF reformed No. 22 Squadron in 1955, closely followed by 202 Squadron, both with helicopters with full search and rescue capability. Flights were stationed at or near an important RAF training station, and their task was to go to the aid of downed military air crews. However, they were soon involved in assisting civilians in trouble on land and sea.
A distress call, and the Royal Air Force swings into action.
A role they have continued ever since, and which accounts for 95% of all calls for assistance. The helicopter crews look on this task as very useful additional training to hone their skills for dealing with service and civilian aircrew incidents. During daylight hours, the helicopter crews are required to be airborne within 15 minutes and within 45 minutes at night. These times are almost always beaten by a considerable amount when a scramble call comes in from either of the two rescue coordination centres. Backing up the RAF helicopters are Royal Navy and Coast Guard helicopters at a further 6 bases.
This is Queen Elizabeth II. I gather you're on your way to Hasler. Many thanks for your assistance. Most impressive.
And RAF mountain rescue teams, manned by a small number of permanent staff and supported by around 30 volunteers at 6 RAF stations.
I'm sorry. Big waves. I didn't believe to save, to survive. I didn't believe. I'm not first time on sea, but I didn't believe. Maybe first God help us, and after that the rest. Thank you.
It's very difficult getting a winchman onto a badly pitching and rolling ship, especially when that ship isn't under power or when it couldn't provide any lights. We also use techniques which involve quite a lot of cooperation from the crew, and with it being a Russian crew, they found it very difficult to understand just what we were trying to do.
Always on standby is a specially equipped Nimrod maritime patrol aircraft at RAF Kinloss in Scotland, which can be called on to get to an emergency very quickly and to act as the on-scene coordinator of any helicopters and ships involved in the rescue operation.
The situation is that the platform is completely on fire from sea level to top. We have in fact pulled back somewhat. The structure is collapsing and it is total fire. We are continuing to spray water on it. One of the standby vessels has reported having 25 casualties, which includes 3 serious burns and 1 injury. We wish to get rid of our non-essentials so that we can handle these casualties when we bring them on board.
Rescue 01, copy.
Rescue 138, the Pharos, we wish you to collect 12 passengers first and proceed then to Ocean Victory to collect paramedics.
Okay. You can stay on radar, pal.
Yeah, okay.
It's bloody bright, isn't it?
Right, so there she goes.
It's certainly collapsing.
Rescue 138. Oh, we cleared the close on land on your heli net.
Rescue 138, that is correct.
Okay, we'll clear it first off. Okay, good. Okay, clear to close. Good. Coming down. You're going to bring him into the front or the back?
Through the back is quicker.
Okay. Over the deck on one side.
Forward 3, forward 2, 1, steady, clear below, still on the tail, 1 on the tail is on, mains are on. Where have they got them in?
Rescue 138, confirm you no more passengers at the moment?
That is correct.
Okay, well, up left 12.
So, shut down. Okay, you can go to the ready?
Lifting to the hover.
Yeah, Rescue 01, Pharos. Just to advise you of the vessel's intent, we are going to try and move back towards the platform to endeavour to keep things cool and to hopefully prevent some of the underwater explosions that we're frightened of.
Pharos Yankee Bravo, as you've probably been told, the risers have obviously broken and the oil is now coming straight up onto the sea. And in fact, the sea is burning as well. Ocean Victory.
We'll take out medic. First coming in.
Affirmative.
How many? 1, 2, 3, let's do 4. Alright, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Steady. The stretch is on. The winch is on. Left 1 and forward. Steady, steady, steady. Left 1. Steady. Winching in. Leg clear of the deck. Still on the high line. Left. Until you can see the boat. Left and back.
Silver Pet, this is Rescue 138. Silver Pet, while your engine stops, the roll will make it quite difficult for us to safely get stretchers off. Can you get underway, sir?
Yes, it'll be very slowly because at the moment we're having a few problems with manoeuvring and all that. You can see all 4 points of the stretcher are secure. On the winchman's happy, right to attach to the boat. Still got it. Got some oil on the water.
Not surprised.
Oh. Only another 2 yards now. That's clear, but you cleared me for it.
right. Wait, pilot. Pilot. Winch out. Out. Winch out. Winch out. Winch out. Stop winching. Wait, fastest move. Lovely, that's all on board.
Clear, bus behind, up and away.
Roger. Just confirm we've got 3 on board?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, how far are we going to take you guys?
We're just going to the Pharos again, the one that's doing the firefighting.
Okay. Not what we can do.
Can you tell me how old you are, Billy?
Rescue 01, sit rep. Brig is now believed to be emitting hydrogen sulfide, and there is a high probability of an underwater explosion. There is heavy smoke and flames spreading to the north of the rig. This is Rescue 01.
Many awards and commendations for bravery have gone to men serving on search and rescue duties. Most notably, 5 George Medals, 1 posthumous, for exceptional courage and skill shown during rescue operations.
Such varied activity in the air seems likely to be the pattern for the future of the Royal Air Force. It's a future filled with uncertainty, and one that has to be matched by high readiness and by professionalism at all levels. To meet that future, the RAF at present has some 650 operational aircraft and over 400 trainers. Its capabilities include air interception, maritime reconnaissance, anti-submarine warfare, attacks on shipping, strategic reconnaissance, strategic and tactical transport, helicopter support for the Army, and ground defense of our airfields by the RAF Regiment. All of these, military support and humanitarian roles, remain essential to a balanced Air Force if it is to be able to make its contribution to the unpredictable demands of a future world.